Drusilla Gobblestone, born under a dark sign, is an orphan who felt quite at home at the cheerful Trixie's Tri-State Orphan Hostelry. Nonetheless, at age 11, she is invited to attend the mysterious Mrs. Morris's School for Wayward Girls and Other Exotic Creatures, a reclusive and elite institution located on a cliff overlooking the Atlantic coast of Maine. The school has a peculiar reputation, known for its secrecy, witchcraft, and elite student body, which typically only accepts girls from distinguished witching families. Despite this, Drusilla has received a particularly stiff brown invite at the behest of the headmistress. Upon arriving, Drusilla is greeted by a musty, unwelcoming atmosphere of dull browns, contrasting with the bright and lively Trixies. She encounters Margaret Finn, a stern senior student, who immediately questions Drusilla's right to attend due to her orphan status. Margaret seems especially suspicious because the school's admissions process heavily relies on family lineage, something Drusilla, as an orphan, lacks. Nonetheless, Drusilla presents her official invitation, and though Margaret expresses doubts, she sends Drusilla to Nurse Mooney for a medical examination. As Drusilla is examined by Nurse Mooney, the nurse expresses confusion about Drusilla's admission, emphasizing that the school no longer accepts wayward girls, despite the school's name. Mooney insists Drusilla must meet with the headmistress, suspecting a mistake. Drusilla, however, feels a twinge of a connection to the school, reflecting on how different she had always felt from the other orphans and her unusual affinity for languages and obscure knowledge. The headmistress, Ellen Tattinger, nicknamed Tatty, is aware of Drusilla's arrival, but is unimpressed by such a puny and sickly-looking student.
"You are Drusilla Gobblestone, are you not?" Tatty questioned.
"I am," the girl responded, chin up, alert and curious. Tatty examined the girl with a discerning eye and found her unimpressive in every way. In an immediate bid to find more witches for Mrs. Morris's, Tatty had sent letters to all the orphanages across the country, searching for children born at the right time. She had cross-listed all the replies with astrological charts and been astonished to find a local candidate. Never mind that every member of the staff had poo-pooed the idea of admitting an orphan. Tatty had decided to admit Drusilla due to her astrological birth under a dark sign, an indicator of potential witchcraft, despite objections from the staff and board members who are hesitant about accepting orphans. Tatty believes Drusilla might be a descendant of a prominent witching family, the Gobblestones. She hints that Drusilla might even have Salem witch heritage.
"I mean, it's just a tingly feeling that this girl's got some Salem blood in her. Look at her nose."
While Drusilla is intrigued by this potential connection, Tatty refuses to let her access the school's resources to learn more about her family, stating that such knowledge is reserved for senior students only. Tatty's real concerns, however, lie elsewhere. The school has been facing a crisis with the mysterious disappearance of several students, including Annabelle Merriweather, Sarah Hopkins, and Cara Burns. Tatty feels overwhelmed and fearful that the missing girls could endanger the entire school. She is torn between managing the school's dwindling enrollment and addressing these unsettling events. Drusilla's arrival adds to her worries, as Tatty knows the school is not safe, particularly for a vulnerable new student. Drusilla's introduction to the school continues with Tatty asking her an unusual question, whether she prefers to use animal parts in her potion making or opt for animal-free alternatives, hinting at the deeper magical education that awaits her. Despite the school's danger and the tension surrounding her admission, Drusilla's journey into the mysterious world of witchcraft has just begun.
Hello there. How are you? I brought you a cat. I know. He was one of the only other things I found, only other beings I found at the outpost where I found you. You were the only human still there. Everybody else was missing. Do you remember anything about that? No? So how are you feeling? Are you remembering? What do you mean? You just want me to start reading, do you? You want me to get back to the story? Well, I have the book here. You're having some trouble with your eyesight as well. No, I didn't know that. I didn't know you were also having trouble with your eyesight. Just a minute. I have something in my medical laboratory. As I have a first aid laboratory, I'll go get my lenses kit and we can test your... You don't want to do that today? You want me to get to reading the story? So you are remembering. Your short-term memory is okay. You are remembering the first part of the story. Well, you know, back on Earth, it's fall. And so in my earth-based gardens, I have a lot of apples. Would you like one? They're delicious. No, you're not hungry right now. You haven't been eating much, if I can say. How about a cup of tea? At least that we can do, right? A cup of tea. Can I just hand it to you then? Do you want to see how you're looking? I think you look better every day. Would you like to see? Yes, no, maybe. Okay. I could also make you the poultice that I normally do. It helps with headaches in particular. I can use these roses, these dried roses, and some other things that I have. Now you just want me to hurry up and get to the reading. I'll just go ahead then and clean your face, and then I will put the medication on the parts of you that are hurting, that got scraped up. You do remember being awake before then on my airship? Yeah, that you can remember, but you can't tell me anything about who you are. No. I have tried to radio to Earth, but we are way too far out. And unfortunately, the next planet is uninhabited. It's simply a gas giant. Just pour in some fresh water. Clear, clean water for your face. And then we'll just add a little bit of this special potion. Shall we? We'll add a little bit to the water to clean your face. Just a wee bit. It won't take more than that now. Let me just go ahead and get the soap. really hard time with the wounds on your face. For some reason, they are just not clearing as much as I would like them to. Like I said, I did radio to Earth, but we're so far out, I can't contact a doctor there. Not to worry, you are completely safe. However, I may have to move you eventually to my lab, my first aid lab, and conduct some of our own tests to see what's happening. And we can definitely, next time, look at your vision and see if it's okay. Just wipe it here, wipe it on your forehead, wipe it down the side. Just up with your face. That hum that you hear is the motor of the starship. Yes, I've been out here in space on my own for a while, but you know, I travel from planet to planet to sell my botanicals and my medicinal drugs, and so I always meet people, and I'm always people, or, you know, Semilucerians from Semiluceria, whatever. A lot of, I should say, different species. And if you ever get to Semiluceria, make sure you try the signophalots. They're delicious. Signophalots. I can never say it correctly because, you know, I can't speak. They're a silicon-based being. It's very hard to speak their language. I have to work with a translating device. Let me just a little bit more. Just a little bit more, right? Yes, we will get there quite soon. We'll get there. I'm just gonna wipe that, just gonna pat that dry on you, okay? Oh dear, I think the kitten has met my cat. It's not always. Just put it across your forehead. Just right here. Drink your tea, it's very good for you. I know you want to get started on the story. Okay, this is also something that I can put on your. Just put a little bit on you. Yes, just a little bit of cream there. Just gonna dab it on those bones, right? Oh yes, I was married. I still feel like I am married. My husband is literally lost in space. I haven't heard from him in 7 years. I've been searching for him for so long. Let me just wipe that off of you a little. I got a little bit right around your nose. A little bit around your nose. Just right there around your nose. Around. part of the story. I promise. Is the tea too bitter for you? Because you're not drinking it hardly at all. I do have some honey. I don't have my own bees on the airship. That would be dangerous. So it is not exactly honey from Earth, but it is honey from a planet that has an animal like a bee. It's very good. You sure you don't want any? It's nice and thick. All right, then can I just have you lean in? I will put the salve on you. Just right then. Time for Drusilla Gobblestone. Are you ready? Shall I go back a little bit to the beginning of chapter 2? Yeah, I'll just go back a little bit.
After a shower with strong delousing chemicals in the tiny bathroom in the nurse's office, never mind that she had no lice, Drusilla toured the school. She liked the space Mooney referred to as the B.E. classroom. It was awe-inspiring, as cave-like as the headmistress's office, but with bright copper fats cooking away on rows of white wood stoves. "What is B.E.?" Drusilla asked. Mooney did not reply and instead marched onwards. Drusilla also liked the enchantment room, where a python paraded unassumingly along the shelves while students studied with their heads down. But the next room, the necromancer's study hall, was the most fun. A few older students had summoned up some pink slimy creatures which oozed across the floor to the delight of all those who watched. Nurse Mooney put a stop to this crime. Reverse this magic. Even betting on snowball races is illegal. Drusilla's eyes traveled the length of the room. It was full of floor-to-ceiling wood paneling. A huge book, encased in amethyst-colored leather, stood on an iron lectern in the back. "I want to read that, whatever it is," Drusilla said. "That old thing? Very dry. Genealogy," Mooney tutted. "That's the book the headmistress was referring to earlier. But what would an orphan want with a genealogy book? Besides, as the headmistress said, it's only for our older students." On to more traditional classrooms. There was the gigantic music hall with its 59 grand pianos, the art room, which was broad and cheery with individual easels for all, and the drama room, which connected to an auditorium with a gilded stage and velvet curtains. There were also study rooms and a ballroom with a dozen glittering crystal chandeliers that Mooney said were from the fin de siècle, whatever that was. "Never go into the ballroom on your own," Mooney said as they peered in. "It spins, weaker stomachs revolt, and stay out of the museum. If the exhibits don't get you, you'll run into Headmistress Tattinger. She's always up there working on her singing stumpery exhibit. Also, if you find the door to fatalism, don't go through it. Tends to have a nasty effect on one's life outlook. Do you understand me, child? Mooney stopped walking and glared down her nose. When Drusilla remained quiet, the nurse's brow melted into a single furry line, resembling Blessing Hollow's infamous pest, the cantankerous caterpillar.
The insect was so large and brown that it looked like a roving piece of poo as it sat atop shrubbery, snacking away. It destroyed all manner of flora, and in the springtime, Blessing's Hollow gardeners worked in packs to decimate its numbers. "Answer me." Mooney shook Drusilla by her shoulders. "What happens if I go through the door to fatalism?" Drusilla challenged. Will I believe everything is predetermined and therefore inevitable? Mooney shook her harder. Right, understood, Drusilla said. It's off limits. This soothed Mooney. She let go of Drusilla's shoulders and relaxed her gaze, causing the caterpillar of a thing on her forehead to separate back into distinct brows. Drusilla eyed her closely. Besides the large, watery eyes, the nurse had an unfortunate amount of forehead. This feature was something she and Mooney had in common. In addition, Mooney had a nose which was bulbous and constantly wrinkled in disgust, and she wore her uniform stretched like a taut rubber band across her body. Drusilla also noticed that the hand that had grasped her seemed more like a clamp than a hand. That is, it did not seem to be made up of 4 fingers and a thumb, but Drusilla could not tell for sure, as both of Nurse Mooney's hands were swathed in long, white gloves. "What are you staring at?" Mooney asked. In a bid for honesty, Drusilla immediately replied, "You." There ensued a lot of shouting about impertinence and orphans and the curative powers of hellfire. When Mooney finished, she straightened her cap even though it had not budged a millimeter. Then she turned on her heel and continued the tour. They climbed another flight of stairs. By the time they reached the 8th floor, the cloud outside began pouring rain. Streaks of lightning lit the rooms. 40 minutes into the tour, they reached the 12th flight of stairs. Loud claps of thunder rattled the window panes. Drusilla followed Mooney up the steep steps that led to the attic. Off a cramped corridor of a forgotten wing, the nurse showed her to a tiny dorm room. Like many of the classrooms they had visited, these rooms were carved out of the cliff. "Your things will be brought here by the night watchman," Mooney stated. "I have no things," Drusilla replied. Mooney's frown grew deeper. In her mind, this was exactly what was wrong with orphans. They were so needy. Not to mention, they paid nothing to the school. How could a private school survive without its students paying an exorbitant tuition bill? Mooney needed to fix her bad tooth, and she was constantly after the new headmistress for a raise. But a raise would only come if more paying students were enrolled, not freeloaders like Drusilla Gobblestone. "Fine, excellent. I shall see what we have in the lost and found. You'll need a uniform, a nightgown, and a toothbrush at the very least." The nurse left her alone in a small room which smelled faintly of lemon. This was the only thing nice about it. Otherwise, it was cold and cramped. Not having anything else to do, Drusilla sat down on her cot and thought things over. She knew medical school would be odd, but this place was turning out to be both odd and unfriendly. Initially, when she first stepped into the musty cloakroom, she had felt a rush of excitement, a magic school. She had felt a twinge deep inside, as if her heart were a compass, and it was pointing her in the direction of witchdom. She had felt for those few seconds as if she might finally have found the place where she was supposed to be. But, given all the oddities and the unfriendliness of the people she had met so far, that twinge of excitement had extinguished. Now she decided to worry and clasped at the silver locket around her neck as if it could keep her safe. She was fretting good and hard when the bell tolled noon, and Mooney reappeared to show her the way to the lunchroom. "I made you a name tag. Please affix it to your shirt." Drusilla gave it a skeptical glance before pinning it to her dress. It read, "Drusilla Gobblestone, Partsless Potions, Girl Without a House." Name tag in place, she rose to her feet. Even at the nurse's brisk pace, it took 25 minutes to reach the cafeteria. The nurse deposited her in the lunch line before stalking across the room to shout at a pale-faced girl. "Nice one!" Drusilla was glad to be rid of her. She was also glad to be in the cafeteria. It was a normal, elongated room with a few high windows emitting some daylight. Sunlight made her feel better. Drusilla shuffled along the lunch line with a knot of apprehension, while everyone else received plates full of roast chicken and mashed potatoes. The lunchroom lady deposited something jiggly and green on her tray. She tried to protest, but the lady interrogated her. "You are partless, right? You don't want animal parts in your potions. You're a girl without a house." Drusilla didn't understand what any of this had to do with lunch. "Well," the lady held her ladle aloft and used it as a pointer, "your kind sits at the last table." Not wishing to make waves, Drusilla carried her tray quietly past 3 tables labeled Morwick, Morlock, and Morglin. Everyone turned to watch her pass. Under the gaze of numerous eyeballs, it seemed a long way to the last table. This table was signless and rickety and meant for 50 students. Currently, however, it was only occupied by 2 girls. Drusilla took a seat opposite them and picked at her food. "I don't understand why this table doesn't have a sign with the house name hanging above it like the other tables do," she mumbled. A broad-shouldered girl with a square face replied by introducing herself as Zelda Hart. She had the jade-colored eyes and seemed rather exotic with her olive-colored skin juxtaposed by her platinum blonde hair. Like the other girls in the cafeteria, Zelda wore a brown pinafore, but she didn't have a dress robe to cover her uniform. Drusilla had noticed that there seemed to be a connection between dress robes and various houses, for a head girl sat at the front of all the other tables, and these girls wore dress robes. Drusilla learned that purple dress robes were for Morglin, sapphire was for Morlock, and forest green was for Morwick. But the purple robes were not very purpley, and the sapphire and green robes looked as if they had been worn by generations of students. In her hand-stitched, primary yellow dress, Drusilla stuck out like a lighthouse beacon. She wished Nurse Mooney would hurry and find her a uniform. After Zelda finished speaking, the other girl introduced herself. She had a strange combination of salt and pepper hair, with black on the top, becoming blonder as it went down the sides of her face in braids. She also seemed to be wearing makeup, which was something Drusilla had never seen a girl do before. She wore so much makeup it was as if she were an actress on the stage in Blessing Hollow's theater. Madame Trixie loved the theater, and she took the orphans to see almost everything. The girl with the strange colored hair introduced herself as Pauline Chestnut.
"And I am Pauline Chestnut, head girl of this house."
"That's not really saying much," said Zelda, "as we're not really even a house, and you appointed yourself head girl."
"Be that as it may, I get to wear the dress robe over my uniform." "You're gonna need a dress robe too, Drusilla, for all the fancy events."
Pauline seemed pedantic in nature, launching into a mini lecture as she answered Drusilla's question.
"So you see,"
Pauline summarized 10 minutes later,
"we don't yet have a house name, as we are a new group of students who feel that animals should not be used in potions."
"Which is why they call us girls without a house," said Zelda. "They are really calling us freaks." And when Pauline asked for a dress robe to become head girl, they gave her that ugly brown one.
"At least the teacups they give us are not brown."
"So you see," Pauline said, continuing her lecture,
"We're just a small group of girls. 3 for now, who are opposed to using spleens of frogs and eyes of newts in our potions. So we have been given the right to form our own group this year, although hardly anybody will join us. We are forming our very own house, and the headmistress says as soon as our numbers reach 10, we can have an official name. Until then, they call us girls without a house. But I ask you, how can you have a head girl without having an official house? It doesn't make any sense.
Well, it's because you just appointed yourself, Zelda said snidely.
Some witches think that we are freaks because we don't want to use animal parts in our potions.
Sadly, they assume we don't want to eat them either, grumbled Zelda.
We don't want to eat them. If I've said it once, I've said it a million times. If you're too squeamish to put bat wings in Palbinder potion, then you shouldn't be eating them in soup.
The thought of batwing soup made Drusilla's stomach turn. Things were certainly different out in the real world. Back in Trixie's tri-state orphan hostelry, the most exotic dish had been le boeuf surprise, a sort of meatloaf with corn and carrots. She would certainly never eat anything made from a bat. Perhaps batwing soup wasn't a favorite in the witch world either, for Zelda pulled a face and said, "You know, nobody eats that traditional fare any longer, Pauline."
Witches who don't want to age do.
My mother says that's a myth, Zelda replied.
Then why did I spy a delivery of bat wings in the kitchen not long ago?
Pauline's forehead creased as she frowned. "They do work for bow binding, my mother says," replied Zelda. "Maybe the teachers are having digestive problems." Pauline's face twisted with disgust, and the discussion on batwing soup died to an awkward silence. Zelda continued to smile but didn't talk, and Pauline picked up a book and began reading. Not being much of a people person, Drusilla didn't think to ask her companions about themselves. She was missing the hostelry, and if she were being truthful, she was also missing Madame Trixie. She had been the first orphan Madame had taken in after establishing the orphanage, and the two of them were very close. She was still thinking about Madame Trixie when the school bell tolled 1, and all the other students rose from the tables in a screech of wooden benches against the stone floor. The students deposited their trays and bins before forming a slow-moving herd that exited through a marble archway. Having forgotten her book, Pauline soon returned with Zelda right beside her. "What's the matter?" Zelda asked. "Don't you know where you're supposed to go next, Drusilla?" Drusilla pulled a folded piece of paper from her pocket. Mooney had jotted down her courses, and she was due in math class in 5 minutes. Problem was, she couldn't remember the way, and Mooney had forgotten to write down the room number. She screwed up her forehead in concentration. Mooney had pointed out the classroom when they walked by during her tour. Was it on the 2nd or the 3rd floor? "It looks like a dolt," exclaimed a girl with hair of jet and amber-colored eyes. She sported a gray and purple dress robe over her pinafore. On her wrist she wore mounds of bakelite bracelets. "Yes, notice its blank stare. Quite the dolt." Madame Trixie's favorite orphan realized the girl was talking about her. Drusilla opened her mouth to respond, but the girl sputtered. "Sure doesn't look like much. Just a stringy-haired, underfed orphan whose tuition bills our parents are forced to divide. Tell me, what exactly do they call that color of hair of yours? Orange with streaks of bright red in it? Is that it? Not sure, but it's the ugliest color I've ever seen." "It's the color of fire, Bridget," Zelda sputtered darkly.
"It's the color of sorcery,"
Pauline added even darker. "It's the color of a Christmas tree bulb," Bridget shouted. "Let's hope, at the very least, that she's smarter than you and Zelda. That would make her the smartest girl in your house, or lack of a house, as the case may be. Cheer up, maybe they'll send you abroad like the other dimwits who used to share your table. That's if they were sent abroad. I don't believe any of it." "Do you mean Annabelle, Sarah, and Cara?" "Yes, they were part of our house for a while, but they received last-minute invitations to Canada," the headmistress said. "I don't believe it," said Bridget.
"Neither do I,"
Pauline added in a conspiratorial voice. Zelda shot her a look.
"Well, I don't. Think about it, Zelda. Bridget's right in this case. You remember how we all sat around the dorm room and talked about it?
After Sarah disappeared?
You me, Kara, and Annabelle. The very next day, Kara was gone, and then Annabelle disappeared 2 days later. Who will be next?
Such rubbish. You heard the headmistress, Zelda replied. Oh yes, we heard her, Bridget interjected, her bracelets clanking together. She said they were sent abroad. At least that's the official story. Who knows? Hopefully you'll be gone next, Zelda, and also you, Pauline. Both you and this new dolt. Her eyes rested on Drusilla, who was beginning to wonder what was wrong with everyone at the school. The nurse was angry. The headmistress called her ridiculously tiny. Margaret had been unfriendly, and this girl was spoiling for a fight. What's that around your neck? A locket? Bridget asked. Now why would an orphan need a locket? Not like you have a mother to put in it. Pass it here. Let's see if the orphan has a boyfriend. Drusilla clutched her locket protectively. Aw, that's cute. So cute. You got a picture of a boyfriend and you're what, like 5? You're such a shrimp. Come on, give it here. Let's see this magnificent bow. Bridget reached out a hand as if she were going to yank the locket from around Drusilla's neck. Drusilla recoiled so fast that Bridget almost fell to the floor as she grabbed for the locket but missed. Angry at having fallen off kilter, Bridget's face turned bright red. Drusilla thought that she needed to do something to fix the situation and decided the best course of action was humor. She was sure that what the situation desperately needed was her best baby cuckoo in the nest of a reed warbler impression. It was a hit at the orphanage. She opened her mouth to start chirping, but the words, I will make gravy from the soup of my enemy's bones and drink it from a golden chalice, roared out instead. Drusilla clapped a hand over her mouth. What was going on? That voice that came out didn't even sound like hers. Expressions of shock appeared on the other girls' faces. Zelda's mouth formed a round O of surprise, and Bridget shouted, That's truly disgusting. But Pauline reacted quite differently. She didn't look shocked at all. Instead, an intense look of satisfaction crossed her face. She crossed her arms and gave a smug smile, as though she had been expecting every word. The many descendants of the Salem witches, the Palmati and Merriweather family, were some of the finest. This fact was drilled into Annabelle Merriweather from the time she was 3 years old. As it was, Anastasia Palmati, Annabelle's mother, was doubly blessed with a Native American witch for a mother and an Italian Palmati warlock for a father. And Annabelle's father, Martin Merriweather, was a powerhouse warlock in his own right, while, to the untrained eye, Martin seemed like your perfectly average mailman. He was anything but. In fact, if you asked the residents of Blessings Hollow if any of them had seen him delivering mail directly into their mailbox, not a one of them could say yes. This was because when Martin floated upside down from mailbox to mailbox, nobody ever saw him, as he had mastered camouflage to the point of being invisible. Many in the witching community knew that Martin came from a long line of powerful witches. His mother was pure Salem. Most witches were soul sharers, or so Annabelle's parents had told her. That meant when a witch or warlock died, they stashed a tiny part of their soul in the younger generation. This was referred to as a maga, and Martin was the beneficiary of years of practice. As it was, he was a direct descendant of the powerful Silence Goodwill. Silence had been one of a handful of Salem witches who had escaped persecution. Unlike the witches who were brutally murdered at the hands of their fellow colonialists, she fled Salem for a blissful life in Albany. There she became an alchemist, one who could cure acne and flatulence simply by mixing a tonic into the town well. She practiced maga, and her daughter did the same, and her granddaughter Tatiana also did as well. On and on it went. knowledge of spells, curses, hexes, etc., passing from generation to generation as the witches stashed bits of their souls in the younger generation until it reached Martin and subsequently his darling daughter Annabel. Unfortunately, Annabel found that having two parents with such fine witching heritage was a burden. There were great expectations among the witching society about what a Palmati Merryweather offspring might be able to do. She might become more powerful than Silence Goodwill. Heck, she might become more powerful than Drusilla of Salem, some would say, as Annabel would pass by on the streets. She'll be so powerful nobody will mess with her, others would say. She might be the one from the prophecy, some would add with fear. No, no, others would correct. That one is supposed to be an orphan that goes bad. Remember, they unite with a dark force and take over the world. These fine people who speculated on Annabel's powers would not have believed that the heir to so powerful a family as the Merryweathers would fall prey to a most hideous evil. Yet that was precisely what had happened. And not only did the witching community not know, Annabel's mother and father did not know either. Martin remained blissfully unaware as he floated down Elm Street stuffing mailboxes. Anastasia Merryweather was so lost in recreating miniaturized naval battles in her kitchen sink that she did not have the faintest idea of her daughter's immediate peril. In fact, Annabel herself didn't yet understand her predicament, but was beginning to dawn on her. At that very moment, her eyelids fluttered open, and she attempted to adjust to a strong light. To her alarm, her vision seemed impaired. The entire space around her was blurry. Where was she? For the life of her, she couldn't remember. With a sense of urgency, she tried to sit up, but found she couldn't move. She tried something less ambitious and wiggled her fingers on her right hand. It was only then that she noticed her surroundings. There was a constant rocking motion, and she was reminded of her cousin Titus's invention of a mechanical swaying bed. Was she at home in New Hampshire? Was this Titus's bed? Were her mother and aunt cooking cabbage in a cauldron over the stove in the kitchen? She sniffed the air which smelled of salt and fish. These were her first clues that she was on a boat. But how did she get here? The last thing she had been doing was singing on the school stage at Mrs. Morris's. No, wait, that wasn't the last thing she remembered. If she thought about it, she could remember that after practicing for the upcoming talent show, she had partaken in the first rugby match of the year. She had mowed down the boys from Brookhaven, wusses that they were. She hated touching other people, who knew what you could catch, but rugby necessitated contact. The thoughts of mowing down the Brookhaven boys caused the corners of her mouth to turn upward, but her smile soon faded. There was no doubt about it. The room was rocking back and forth. Outside she could hear waves. Light was flooding in from a porthole. Something was wrong. Annabel's family didn't do boats or water. Several members of the Merryweathers had been dunked during post-Salem witch trials. Annabel's very own great-great-grandmother Tatiana had become so traumatized by repeated dunking that she stopped taking baths. Rumor had it that Tatiana's husband, Titmore, had to sneak up and douse her once a week to keep her from becoming overly smelly. Unfortunately, this strong hatred of water rolled down from generation to generation until it stopped with Annabel. She was fine with showering, thank you very much. In fact, she showered 3 or 4 times a day. The boat hit a swell and rocked to the right. Annabel almost fell off the cot. Think. How did I get here? Annabel wondered. For that matter, where exactly was here? Was she on a great lake, or, Freya forbid, the Atlantic? Annabel remembered receiving a note. It had been from Professor Cuckleburn. Inside it read, "My dearest Annabel, your singing is most excellent. Please meet me under the bleachers on the rugby field at noon, and we can discuss your place in the show. Yours, Occultia Cuckleburn. It seemed strange that the choir teacher would send such a missive, but then again Cuckleburn had been acting rather jumpy and out of sorts since school had restarted. Case in point, a week prior, Annabel had entered the music room to find the professor talking to a giant of a man dressed in a navy peacoat. The man was clutching her by the forearm, and only let go as Annabel came through the door. Cuckleburn appeared frightened for a moment before turning red with embarrassment. For his part, the man swept past Annabel angrily, pulling his scarf around his scarred face as he left. What was the man doing here in a girls' school? Up until that point, the only men Annabel had seen inside the school had been the delivery driver who brought the produce to the kitchens and the night watchman, Alamander Eventide. Even the fathers of the very fine girls who attended the school were required to leave their offspring on the front door and proceed no further. Is everything all right? Annabel asked Cuckleburn after the man hurried off. In response, Cuckleburn turned a brighter shade of red. Mind your own, she snapped. This was such uncharacteristic behavior on behalf of the kind music teacher that Annabel took a quick step backwards and stumbled over a roaming ermine. The conversation ended as the other students flooded through the doorway, plopping down on piano benches and commencing with the prerequisite scales. Annabel sat down stiffly on her bench. She pulled a dampened cloth from her book bag and wiped each key. The rest of the class progressed as normal. After a rousing song of Dinah, Annabel forgot all about the incident. Then, a week later, the note came.
Okay, I see you're nodding off. So I'm going to go ahead and go back up top and make sure that the ship is going in the right direction. You know it. It's so easy to get lost out here in the galaxy.
I am so sorry that story caused a little bit of agitation. It is a bit of a dark story. So how about while I'm up here guiding the airship, I do a guided visualization with you. Can you hear me well? This intercom is a little bit faulty. Okay, that's great. And you're feeling comfortable? You're laying down in a comfortable position? Great, then we'll go ahead and start the guided visualization. Since we're already out here in the universe, we're just going to let our mind drift into the far beyond. We're going to journey far beyond. We're going to journey far, letting ourselves drift into the stars, letting ourselves drift into the stars, higher and higher, until all that surrounds us is peace. All that surrounds us is peace, is calm. All that surrounds us is peace, calm, and the soft light of the night sky. The soft light of the night sky. If you want, go ahead and close your eyes. Close your eyes and let your body, allow your body, allow your body to sink deeply into the surface beneath you. Take a long, gentle breath in. Long, gentle breath in and slowly release and slowly release. Letting go of any tension, any worries. With each breath, allow yourself to relax even more. With each breath, allow yourself to relax even more. Take another deep breath in, filling your lungs with calm, filling your lungs with calm, filling your lungs with calm, and exhale softly, exhale softly. Feel yourself becoming lighter. Feel yourself becoming lighter, more at ease, feeling yourself drift, slowly drifting higher and higher, slowly drifting higher and higher. Now, in your mind's eye, imagine the night sky above you. Imagine the night sky above you. Imagine a vast open sky filled with stars glimmering softly. Imagine a vast open sky filled with stars glimmering softly. Imagine a vast open sky filled with stars glimmering softly, as though they're waiting for you, as though they're waiting for you, calling you. Let yourself be drawn to them. Let yourself be drawn to them, drawn up, drifting higher and higher, drifting higher and higher, effortlessly floating upward, effortlessly floating upward. As you breathe, imagine that with each exhale, you become even lighter. You become even lighter. Feel yourself slowly lifting. Feel yourself slowly lifting, as though you're beginning to drift away, as though you're beginning to drift away from the world, up into the sky, away from the world, up into the sky, higher and higher, weightless, drifting higher and higher into the stars. into the stars. Oh dear, the intercom is acting faulty again. So I'll say goodnight to you. Sweet dreams as you drift into the stars.